feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled movie review. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato maker approved, Eric Marchin.
What?
We've been recording for like 3.5 hours.
We've been talking about Batman for forever now.
Yeah.
Not Batman forever, but
it's a Friday night. I'm hopped up on pizza and Starlight Coca-Cola, and we are reviewing Damien Powers' No Exit, starring Havana, Rose Liu, Danny Ramirez, David Rysdahl, Dale Dickey, Mila Harris, Dennis Haysbert, and more. Eric, how are you doing on this Friday night? We've been talking for 4 hours, but I mean,
Matt,
I'll ask you
how
again.
am I doing? We're about to review No Exit. That's how
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah. So No Exit is a Hulu or 20th Century Studios produced movie that is premiering on Hulu in the United States and Disney Plus Star here in Canada. It is available now for you guys to watch if you so please, or if you're here to figure that out, stay tuned. But spoilers, Eric and I are on the same page. That's not spoilers. You'll find out. You'll find out. I'm not giving it away yet. You got to listen to at least 10 more minutes before I tell you.
Are they going to say 10 more seconds?
That's true. That is also true. Eric, just imagine, a snowy, isolated place. It's the middle of, maybe it's getting cold out. You're sitting in a cold place and you're at Toronto after dark, maybe a Midnight Madness movie at TIFF, but that's basically what No Exit kind of feels like. Let's get into it. Eric, what the hell's No Exit?
Yeah, so No Exit is based on Taylor Adams's novel of the same name. It's a mystery thriller that is also kind of capitalizing on the recent trend of whodunits, even though it kind of abandons that concept about halfway through the film. Well, not even halfway through the movie, like 30 minutes in, it kind of, shows its hand. But essentially what it is a kind of murder mystery where the story is revolving around a recovering drug addict who is basically given one last chance at this center that she's at right now, because it's either, go to rehab or be in jail. But her mother, she finds out through a call from a friend, had a brain aneurysm and she's in the hospital, and the staff will not let her leave, so she escapes and starts to head to Salt Lake City. She's the center that she's at is in Sacramento. And on the way, she gets derailed because there is a snowstorm. So she ends up staying at a visitor center.
Classic New Zealand snowstorms.
Exactly, because this movie was shot in New Zealand, and no, it does not look like a Lord of the Rings film. But it could have been shot anywhere, because most of it does take place within a single location, which is this visiting center that's kind of a forest kind of like ranger park kind of thing. And so when she gets there, she meets some other people that have taken shelter, people like Dennis Haysbert and Dale Dickey's couple who are going to Reno to do some gambling. You have kind of a weird, basically eccentric type who's kind of off to himself named Lars. We'll get into that in a second. We have a guy who's kind of sleeping and wakes up, played by Danny Ramirez. And all of them are kind of just killing time, waiting for the storm to subside and move on with their life. And as they're kind of, doing a little bit of small talk, trying to distract themselves and find Wi-Fi if there is any. We have Darby, the main character, who's played by Havana Rose Liu, going outside looking for bars. She comes across a van with Nevada license plates and finds out that there is a young girl trapped in the van. And so she then decides to play Hercule Poirot and try to deduce who is the kidnapper. A series of more frustrating and convoluted plot twists and turns and lazily constructed flashbacks make this movie one of the most aggravating adaptations I've seen in some time, where these movies, even if they're not great, are usually disposable entertainment and
Yeah.
fun. I found this to be not only a chore, but also I gotta call BS, like the game that they're playing, on how a lot of the supporting
That is just
characters
so on the nose. Yeah.
basically like act towards a recovering addict. So in this opening sequence where you have her, you know, during kind of a session with other members, and she gets this phone call from a guy named Joe, who we're not really sure is, maybe it's her sister's partner or something like that. But anyways, her sister has had a falling out with her, and so has her mother, and you learn that they've been estranged for some time. She gets a call that the mother has had a brain aneurysm and that it is a life or death situation, but the orderly who gets the call and tells her that it's an emergency call to come and get it says, okay, well, you can't leave. The only way you can leave is if we clear you to go through your doctor, who, by the way, is off duty, and it's a Friday, so he probably won't be back until Monday. But if your mom dies between now and then, and it is real, and we can't take your word for it, but if it is real, you can't sue us or anything like that, which is like a complete fucking bullshit. Because I'm sorry, like, I understand that
Go
you know
off. Yeah. Cool.
that the libel, like, quality of, like, okay, people that go into rehabs have to sign certain agreements and stuff like that, and they want to keep them from either getting high outside of the facility,
Sure.
or bring things back in, or when it comes to trust. But if you have a life or death situation where a family member dies, there's got to be like this legal area where it's like, okay, well, if you held this person in from seeing somebody that died, like, they could probably sue you.
Yeah, I don't know, but I get what you're saying. The movie is just ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know. I could see people just being like, well, it's just disposable entertainment. It's short, it's derivative, it's feel formulaic, like, and all of those things sound like negatives, but sometimes that's just kind of all you want from a movie like this. But I don't know. I just found it kind of grating as well, where I'm just like at every corner, I was kind of like, oh my God, all right. Like and it just felt very, like, I don't want to be too mean to the movie, but like it felt like amateurish, like to the point of almost student filmy at times. And like I know some of the kind of like lower budget kind of thriller movies can have that kind of vibe, and some of them can be fun. And I said Toronto After Dark and even Midnight Madness, which I is a program I love, but it programs a lot of stuff that can be like this movie that can go one way or the other. It can be like a short 90-minute, like, okay, that wasn't great, but I had a fun time watching it with a crowd kind of thing. Or it can be something like what this movie is, where I was kind of just rolling my eyes at it and going like, it's kind of ugly looking, like everything from the snow to the set to the cinematography just felt cheap and flat. Like none of the snow felt believable. Like even like, criticize Quentin Tarantino as much as you want, but like I felt like it was fucking freezing in that cabin in Hateful Eight, because he made it fucking freezing in that cabin in Hateful Eight. And like I'm sitting looking at her in the car and I'm like, why? Like little things, nitpicky things of going like why isn't her breath like showing that outside or in the car, things like that. And then like I found like every twist you mentioned that is not really a twist, but then there is a twist that like it's the obvious choice, but then to make throw you off, there's a second
Bet you
twist,
didn't see that one
and then
coming.
which you will see it all coming. That's what I
Yeah.
mean by formulaic. And like if you've seen one of these movies, you've seen them all. And sometimes you just want like something easy to watch like that. But like I just felt like um none of the acting was believable. It was never all that entertaining. It was just kind of ugly and cheap looking. And then on top of that, I just felt like some of it was kind of like I would roll my eyes at it, of like even the smash cut when she's leaving the facility to the no exit title card, or some of the editing choices that um
The match
felt,
cutting.
yeah, the match cutting I just did not love, of like her, that Chekhov's, we joke Chekhov's
Cocaine
cocaine, when she's in the bathroom showing you that she has this baggie of cocaine that she's
that she
trying
found in
not
the
to,
car that she
yeah,
stole out of
of,
rehab.
of course. And that she's trying not to, use. And so
Well, even that is
is,
a like
yeah,
what is like the morality of this film is so weird because the way that they portray Darby, and like that's the other thing that drives me nuts. So her last name is Thorn, and she's a thorn in the side of the kidnapper.
sure, sure, yeah.
But the thing that bothers me about it is that the way she is portrayed in the first scene of the film and the way that they set her up is that we're going to see maybe or learn at least how the character, you know, has done some questionable things in the past based on being addicted to every drug under the sun. She's a user, maybe, with having done some horrible things and burnt some bridges over time. And we think like, okay, like this story, the way that it's going to play out, you're going to see what she did, or she'll talk about it more and she'll open up about it, but there's never anything that's really kind of like, oh wow, that this really is a redemption story as well as a murder mystery, or not murder mystery, but a mystery thriller. Like you think like, oh okay, like this is working as a character study for her to kind of like redeem herself in some way, but she never really does, at least in the movie, has anything that I would say is awful other than just kind of being a recovering addict. And then the way that it uses, Chekhov's cocaine in a
Is
certain
the
act
worst, dude. Like,
is
it's
going
without,
against the whole point of
yes,
its morality.
it's without spoiling anything, but they like almost use it as this like positive super strength kind of thing. Like she has to use to finally get the bad guys and stuff like that, which is just so
In a last case scenario, this is what
is
you
like
have to do.
yeah, it's so gross when you're tackling that kind of stuff. And I think that was like when the movie crossed a line for me where it was just like, all right, this isn't just fun, disposable kind of, and it wasn't fun up to that point, but it could have been maybe. But that was where it really hammered home. It's not really hammered, but it's a nail gun. But like
Nailed
really,
it.
uh, that this movie was just like, all right, you're again, that to me, that decision with the cocaine in the last act is just not super great. But like, it's just so formulaic, and I've seen this movie like a million times, and it's hard at this point, like unless you do something differently, or even the twists and turns that they throw in, like I feel like they're not even trying very hard. It's like, maybe if you did a single location, who napped it, like who was the kidnapper kind of thing, could have been fun, kind of like the Hateful Eight or something like that. But like, and any other, single location style mystery. But they kind of right away, like even with the playing the bullshit game, like the card game, which is so on the nose, and then you're like, oh, that okay, it seems pretty obvious that it's probably like that person has to be a red herring. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that was a decision. And then you're like, oh, this is probably what's gonna happen. You're like, okay, that's exactly what happened. And I feel like you just go through the motions really, and like, I just sat there basically stone faced, and I was like, all right, very predictable, very formulaic, mystery thriller, not even mystery, just thriller.
It's
Um,
only a mystery up until you're introduced to all the characters and you find out that the girl is in the van. And then once the game is being played, the game of BS, of bullshit, it's automatically revealed like, okay, this is how it's gonna go. And what you were mentioning with the red herring, it's like, okay, well because
it seems so obvious that it
the
had to be a red
yeah, the
herring.
way that these movies are made, there's always the person or situation that throws you off to make you question the most logical answer. And then it gives up on that completely. And instead of continuing on like the mystery of solving who it is, it
It
just
just becomes like a
throws
very,
it throws one ridiculous twist after another, and then it has one of the worst flashback scenes I have ever seen, and how lazily inserted it is. Like the editors must have just been like, really, we're just gonna throw this in
Well,
here like that?
Disney didn't give them any extra money to do any of that, dude.
Um,
Like,
yeah,
there's
it's
no
just it's
way.
so bad, and like I normally really like Dale Dickey and Dennis Haysbert, and like Dale Dickey, who is a character actor, and she's been in a ton of stuff. Like she's really, really good in Winter's Bone. She was recently in Palm Springs as the bartender. She always plays bit parts, and when she gets a bigger role in a movie, it's nice to see her kind of like get to act alongside either seasoned vets or up and coming actors, and she has a great presence here. If I hadn't seen her in all the other stuff that I've seen her in, I would say that she's terrible. And
Yeah.
everybody, except maybe Dennis Haysbert, who's not great, but Dennis Haysbert maybe has just a great
He has a
voice, and
presence. Yeah.
I like him in general. Um, but he would be better off just doing more Allstate commercials than doing this movie, because he's given nothing to do, and the performances
Yeah, he
are
just
so
sits there.
flat and boring, and the plot is predictable, the storytelling is generic, the direction is on autopilot. It's mean spirited to the lead character, to the point where you're like every opportunity where she's supposed to get the upper hand or kind of like figuring things out, it always kind of sides more with the villains of the piece. And it's kind of weird that it always kind of like, it's like, oh, you think she has the upper hand? No, we're going to make it worse for her, and we're going to torture her in horrible ways because she's a recovering addict and this is a redemption story. But there's not a lot that we know about her to say that she's done really anything horrible. And the one moment we have of like why the sister and the mother are estranged from her isn't really a good enough reason for
No.
her to be kind of, again, a flawed character. And it's just weirdly structured and designed that way in terms of the character arc, and it's so brutal and cruel to her. It's just and even the child involved in it kind of felt like, oh, like this is really badly put together in terms of her being a pawn in this situation. And then the thing that drove me nuts, and I don't want to judge somebody based on one performance, but David Rysdahl as Lars is so obnoxious. I know I spent a lot of time tonight talking about Paul Dano, but this performance as Lars, who he's basically looks like Wes Anderson cosplaying as a lumberjack, is terrible. Like, is absolutely not even a caricature. It's worse than that. Like it's somebody that you would see in like a bad SNL sketch playing, a weird kind of
It's
one-off Twin
almost
Peaks
satirical,
character.
but it's not.
Yeah, and it's done in a way that like I don't know if it was a disconnect between like the actor maybe not really connecting with the role, or maybe Damien Power, who directed the film, wanted to get this kind of performance out of him, but it's just bad. Like it's to the point where like this character not only takes you out of the film, it makes you resent the entire movie just based on how he acts, and how, like, again, he's supposed to kind of be pathetic and weird, and and sort of, again, a red herring, but he's just so grating, and this whole movie suffers because of this fucking character. Sorry,
No, I don't have
it's
any.
so
I
bad.
agree with you completely. Like, I was
Like even his tell, like it's like, oh, like you're setting something up here where it's like, oh, everybody has a tell, and like this is going to come back later, and it really doesn't. And the way that like his character behaves and acts, even though yes, there are people that are antisocial, or have social problems with social skills, it's so exaggerated and over the top. It's just it's so cringeworthy.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
bad.
I totally agree. I don't really have much more to say
I
other
don't
than
either. Other than it was
than
not good.
yeah. Is it's not even really worth a streaming watch in my opinion. Like
Unless you're a
it's like
completist for these kind of movies and
yeah,
you want to watch them all. But again, it's not even necessarily a complete whodunit. It kind of abandons that concept
and then
30
becomes a
minutes into the
pretty
movie.
formulaic, bad guys are trying to outsmart the good guy and vice versa kind of thing in a single location. So yeah, I don't know. I think, some people might give it a soft pass, and like I don't know if there's anything like egregiously, horrible other than maybe like, the portrayal of Lars and stuff like that. But
And
it's
also
just
a recovering addict as
that
well.
part.
And
Yes, sorry.
yeah.
I take that back immediately. That part with the cocaine and how they handle being a recovering addict and how they use that as a plot point and like a big part of the finale is not super great. So that is egregiously bad. But like the rest of it is just kind of like, all right, let's go through the motions and like,
Yeah.
and that's the kind of movie that this is. And I think it fits for streaming, I guess, but um I'd barely recommend unless you really love, you know again, like Eric said, like these style of movies or this genre. But even then, like, I don't know, I'm gonna give it a 2. It's fine.
Yeah. And I'm being generous
Like,
with the 2.
you are like, and Eric's lowest is usually, unless you really hate something.
Hey,
But
I saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre and I gave that 1. So
oh, I haven't watched it yet. I just haven't gotten around to it. But thank you all for listening or watching. We really do appreciate it. Please go check out our other reviews that we have up right now, which would be, I'm thinking we're doing this all out of order. So it'd have to be, I got to be careful because everything's backwards
we will have
tonight
reviews coming up for the
for Turning
Batman
Red and the
Turning
Batman
Red.
next
Yep.
week. So stay tuned for those. Those are coming next week, but you can listen or watch the Uncharted review as well as Death on the Nile and Five Cream. Go check those
2
out.
of those are actual whodunit movies or
mhm.
whodunit adjacent films.
Yeah, that actually try to trick you.
Yeah.
Neither do like a great job at that.
One of
but
them has a
like
great origin story about a
a
mustache,
mustache,
though.
yes,
And it's Scream 5.
Ghostface stash. And then the 116th episode of the Untitled Movie Podcast, where we talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Jackass Forever, and other things. We also had a multi-trailer madness recently, Oscar nominees, Greg Miller from Kind of Funny. So you guys can check out all the backlog episodes of the Untitled Movie Podcast. Speaking of Greg Miller, he wasn't on this episode, but I went over to Kind of Funny to do the Kind of Funny screencast, which you guys can check out right now as well, where I was with Tim Geddes and Joey Noel chatting about some other TV shows, sticking with the Hulu and Disney family. We talked about Pam and Tommy. We also talked about After Party. We talked about Murderville. We talked about Last One Laughing Canada, other things like that. So go check out that episode. Just search for Kind of Funny Screencast on YouTube or podcast services. For this show, Untitled Movie Reviews, Untitled Movie Podcast, same places, YouTube and podcast services, or just go to our one-stop shop, which is at Letterboxd at Untitled_movies. As always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, but mostly at UntitledMoviePodcast.com, and you can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric March, and you can find more of my video reviews on RogersTV.com/CinemaScene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
Lars.